tricky. So around the end. Look at that. What a beast. Solid looking, very nice CV stuff going on over here. USB as well as MIDI. Let's plug it in and have a listen. Right, so for me the usefulness of a synth is directly correlated to the amount of controls that I can fiddle with. So for me something like this is fantastic because all of the controls are out there, and so I'm intrigued to know, you know, having used an Odyssey once many years ago, how I get on with this, trying to make a few sounds. So I'm not an amazing synthesist by any stretch of the imagination, but I will do my best at showing you what I have gathered about this. So there are two VCOs, two oscillators, and you mix them here in the audio mixer section. So at the moment we've got VCO 1 up. You tune them up here, but basically you can switch them between a square and sawtooth wave. We've got a transpose button here, so let's leave it in the roughly in the middle there. So the second oscillator, you can hear them just ringing a tiny bit there against each other. Quite like that. I mean, I could tune them to be as absolutely dead on, but I quite like that. So let's go back to VCO 1 now. What can we do to this? So if we look at the VCO 1 section here, first of all, you should note that we are on the VCA voltage controlled amplifier section here. We're using the AR, which is just attack and release, for the actual VCA of the note. So if I change that, you'll hear that is changing the envelope of the overall note. There's a second envelope generator here, the ADSR, but I'm leaving that switch to AR because I want to use this for something else in a minute. So we can do frequency modulation, and there are two ways of doing that. I'll put it on the square wave so you can hear what's going on. So the amount is controlled by that, and you select which type. So if you want just a bit of gentle vibrato, then you can do that. Now, there's another way to frequency modulate. Firstly, you can switch it to the ADSR. So we've got a tiny bit of decay in here. So if I put some of this in. So you get the idea. It's the amount that you're using that ADSR. And if I want to make that longer, I just increase, or I could do. You get the idea. Now, there's another way of doing modulating, which is called the sample and hold. Sample and hold mixer is kind of like a random generator. So you've got a variety of different ways of influencing what comes out. But let's just have a quick listen to this. So if I put up, so we've got sample and hold. If I put up the amount. So you get the idea. The output lag smooths it off. And we can change the speed by basically changing the LFO. So the LFO controls lots of things. There's just one LFO, although you can use VCO1 as an LFO as well, which we'll come to in a minute. This controls everything. So if we go back to the if we go back to here, where we've got LFO on here, so you get the idea. That controls the speed. Now, where it gets interesting is when we start to put in a second VCO. So let's put them both up. We've got, let's switch them to sawtooth. So we're going to try and make something that's a little bit kind of stringy in effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the LFOs. We're going to put in a little bit of LFO on each one. And see what that sounds like. Okay, so not too bad. It's starting to sound a little bit characterful. What we can do though is if we're on the square wave, we can change the pulse width. Now this basically controls the amount of kind of the up section of the square wave to the amount of the down section of the square wave. And I'll show you how that changes just on one oscillator first. And then you can modulate that using, again, the LFO or the ADSR. So you can hear how that's kind of shaping the front of the note. Where it gets interesting, if we go back to the LFO, we'll use the LFO on VCO1, and then let's put a bit of modulation. We'll put a different amount in each one. And we'll use a little bit of the ADSR on that one with a bit of that shape. So you can hear there you've got a different kind of texture being produced. We can go a little bit more extreme with it. Even put them both on the LFO. So you can hear them starting to ring there. So that's quite an interesting sound. Now, what about the filters? So up here we've got the filter section. And if you look, we've got the frequency here. And here we've got the resonance. So right up to self-oscillate. We've got basically the three different types of filter from the three different eras of the original ARP. So this one's, if we put it up kind of quite high, that one sounds like that, middle one, and the bottom one, much more severe. So let's go back up to the top one. Now, one thing we can do with the filter is we can control that down here with voltage control. So first of all, let's look at controlling it with the LFO. So you can see our rate of the LFO here. Let's add a bit of that in. So you get the idea. This sets your kind of center frequency, and then this is oscillating that frequency. You can also use the sample and hold. Which gives you that kind of random element. Or you can use the ADSR. So here, let's go back to a little bit of decay. Everything else set flat, and then we get this. So that gives you that kind of nice kind of squelch at the beginning. You can put a little bit of attack on as well. Let's go back down to the bass. Gives you that lovely kind of characteristic squelch on the bass there. So let's pull that off for a second. Now, what are we also? Oh, so we've got the high pass filter here. This is just a global high pass filter. So you can hear that. We've got drive on. Now that adds an extra kind of bit of beef to it, so I love having that on. It's pretty nice. Okay, let's go back over here. So let's pull off the filter stuff, just open up the filter a little bit more and take off the ADSR control. So let's go back over here and look at using VCO1 as an LFO. So we're going to pull down VCO1. Actually, let's leave it up for a second. I'll show you what happens. Up here, you can turn that. It's either playing from the keyboard. Let's pull that off a sec. Or that turns it into a low frequency oscillator. So you can hear it, obviously, but it's super, 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 super low, super slow. Now, the frequency of that is controlled, again, by this. and that is then available to modulate other stuff. So how do we use it? Well, one way we can use it, if you look for VCO1 here as under the controls. So here we can see that it can be used to control the sample hold mixer. So if we then go route that to VCO2, let's take this one off for a second, and we listen to VCO2. So first of all, without, and then I'm just getting this kind of set right. Let's put it on the square. Put plenty in there. Then we want to modulate from the sample hold mixer here. And then what we can do is we can modulate the frequency of VCO1 using something else. So let's do some frequency modulation using the ADSR. And then we can get this kind of effect. So we can do, we can put a bit of the ADSR on the frequency modulation here as well, to get some interesting stuff going there. And that's there's probably tons more clever stuff that you can do with that, but that shows you how you can route that across there. So let's go back to our normal mode. Let's pull off our frequency modulation and get this back roughly in pitch. Okay, now there's another thing you can do, which is you can force these to sync together. And if you push this button down, then you can hear both voices playing together. And you can start to hear, if we split the voices off, the timbre of the second voice is changing when it's playing with the first voice, but they're still playing the same note. Now, I can give you some really interesting effects by basically changing the frequency of VCO2. And you can then modulate that, again, here, frequency modulation, using the ADSR. We can put a bit of attack in that. So that, again, is a really interesting sound. The other thing that you can do with that is, let's get them back in the same pitch. Let's unsync them again. Oops. Now, the other thing that's quite interesting to do is here in the audio mixer, we've got a source here that's either the noise, let's just listen to that on its own, which is either pink noise or white noise, like that. But it also has this setting ring mod. And what that does is that is a ring modulation of these two oscillators, which is combined and then is available up here before you get to the outputs of each individual one. Now, the output of that sounds kind of interesting. Okay, that's not changing much when we change the waveform, but what we can do is we can change the frequency here and listen. So what you could do is you could find something that's roughly in pitch. By tuning that up a bit, and then you can use the frequency modulation again, or you can use a little bit of LFO to get it varying. Oh, sorry, wrong one. So I'm switching that back to the LFO. And you can get, you know, again, putting in the ADSR, you'll get all kinds of crazy and interesting sounds from that. So that's kind of, I think we've been through everything. So let's just quick check. So we've got our VCOs, we've got all the controls down here. We've looked at the sync control and the LFO control here. We've got our LFO frequency up here. We've done the filters, the sample and hold section, the audio mixer. looking at switching off filter over here. Oh yeah, there's one other control up here, which it just literally turns up the volume without you having to play the keyboard. So yeah, limited. I haven't really found a use for that yet, but there you go. You can switch things around, obviously, so that if let's say that we're using the for the VCA, we'll use the ADSR instead. So you want to get that decay on there. Then you're going to use, instead for the filter, you'd use the AR. So for example, well, you wouldn't have to. I mean, so as an example, let's switch that over to the AR. Right, we need to set some attack on there, but that's a possibility. You can switch those around there. And then there's the final thing. Let's go to a bass sound. So let's turn off, actually, hang on. So you've got this sound, this interesting sound, but if you put the VCOs back in, then you get something really interesting, because you're getting that ring modulation rubbing against the actual pitch of the VCO itself. So that's quite an interesting sound as well. Now you've got these effects in here. So we're on plate 1 at the moment. Turn up the amount here. But again, you can do all kinds of stuff. What do we want? Let's have a reverse. Yeah. So there's some really nice effects in there. It's obviously more useful if you are playing live with it, I guess. I would probably prefer to just record the raw output of the sound and then mess around with it in my DAW. But yeah, horses for courses. Portamento control over here. Let's turn the effects off. Get the idea. And then you've obviously got your controls over there. Kind of a bit difficult to get used to the feel of those. They're kind of weird, but probably true to life from the original. Anyway, so that's the Behringer Odyssey, the recreation of the original ARP Odyssey. I actually really like this. It's really solid. It's nice and easy to use, and you can get some really great fat, deep sounds out of it. So yeah. It's a thumbs up for me. A bit of an experiment. I've never bought one of these recreations before, but actually, it's about £400, £399 in the UK. So not, certainly compared to the cost of buying and maintaining the original kind of analog synths, it's not very expensive at all. But yeah, I'd recommend it. It's a good little machine, and it does that kind of. It's different from the Moog stuff, so it's a good complementary color if you already have some Moog stuff as well, but a good alternative, and really solid and nice sound. So there we go. Thanks very much for watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye bye.